I'm not just saying this because he's my father, but I think the manner in which he described a memoir is absolutely spot on. Because the process that I undertook in doing so, it sort of made me realize how accurate that statement is. I've always been a very nostalgic person. My first trip in nostalgia that I can remember was when I was 13 years old. I was 13 years old and I yearned for the days when I was young, believe it or not. Looking at it now, literally 30 years later, it sounds actually quite amusing. But my yearning for nostalgia probably also was part of the ingredients that helped me get to this point. And it is like magic, just as my father said, because when you are zoned in the writing process and you're typing and thoughts and memories are coming back to you, it's almost like you're reliving the moment. It's like you can smell the smells in the air, you can hear the sounds that you heard when you were growing up, and for a while you are taken away to a time that was happy and simple. And that is what I'm trying to kind of evoke in writing the memoir, and I hope it will evoke similar memories to people who read it. Okay, you want to know how I documented this? In answering this question, I'll have to give a little bit away. It's a bit of both, note-taking and voice recording. I have on occasion visited friends and family, obviously, particularly elder members of my family, and they wouldn't know that I'm recording it on my cell phone. And I would sneakily tell them that as I'm leaving. And then they would go, "Oh, Kevin, and I was skinnering so much." And I was like, "Auntie so-and-so, that is the point. That's what I wanted." Obviously, I don't put that up for public consumption, but it's something that I keep hidden in my treasures of memories and information. And obviously, as you'll see in the book, every now and again I'll change somebody's name slightly. People who know the stories will pick that up. But also, I think it's just a nice little archive for me. But yeah, so I've done a little bit of both. And it's been fascinating because even when people are telling me their stories as I'm recording it, in my mind I'm already forming a way of how I'm going to articulate it in the book and how I will join it to other stories that other people told me. So now that I'm in this creative industry, if you will, I think I'm learning how to do those, joining the dots and making stories make sense for people to read and enjoy. A Sunday in our household. I think Sundays, I don't know if there was ever a typical Sunday, because there could be variations, as you will gather from reading the book. There were little anecdotes and incidents that happened on Sundays that varied from Sunday to Sunday. But if I must talk about a typical Sunday, there were periods when my mother, my brother and I would go to church in the morning. My father was not a religious man. There were times when if we were a little lazy, we wouldn't go to church. But generally, my mother would be cooking in the kitchen. My father would be reading the newspapers. In fact, the first order of business was for him to go buy the newspapers. And he did that with much pleasure because Sundays there was usually bulk editions of newspapers or multiple newspapers that he could read. And he would read them and get angry at the state of the world. But that was what he loved, listening to the radio in the corner. And obviously we'd have a nice Sunday lunch with my brother and I laying the table beforehand. What I remember vividly as you asked the question is the Sunday lunches, now that I think about it in retrospect, were actually so central to the storytelling because that's where a lot of the stories were told. Inevitably, we'd listen to, perhaps the radio would play golden oldies on a Sunday. And I would quiz my father, "Do you remember the song? Do you remember the song?" I don't think there's a song that he never remembered because he loved music. And that would somehow spark a talk about his childhood, about music, about the world, about my mom. And my parents would tell us all these stories about the time that they were growing up. So storytelling around the Sunday lunch table was very common and popular in the Wyk household. And then my parents would do the Sunday nap while my brother and I were washing up the dishes because we were also given our chores to do. And yeah, we'd end up watching TV or playing outside, and I'd come back when the sun sets and my parents are just about finishing their afternoon nap. So that was a typical Sunday in the Wyk household. I absolutely consulted a lot of my father's collective works, so much so that when the project started and I was writing down a lot of his, how he came to become a writer, how he came to be a writer, I actually got a lot of his old journals and poetry and short stories, where I was wondering if this is going to become more of an academic work. But obviously it became more of a playful story and creative process, where I wanted to just tell the story about him and the genesis of him becoming a writer. So yes, I did consult it quite a lot. I also found some stories and some works that I hadn't seen before, which was fascinating because it cast an eye on how how the burgeoning writer, came to be. Some of his early writing efforts were interesting, but he certainly matured over time and he became a lot better, if I may say so myself. This question to what advice I would give to aspiring writers, it could be a very easy question to answer, but it could also be a very long, complicated answer. Not complicated in the sense that it's difficult to become a writer, but there's so much different advice that can be given. The one thing my father always espoused was if people wanted to write, they should simply read as much as they can. But they shouldn't read with a view to it being laborious. They should read it for the love of reading. And as you're reading, I think my father described this once himself, some kind of magic happens in your mind, because it kind of chisels and hones your mind into developing your own style of storytelling. And I think that's what my father wanted to bring to the fore in his writing. So people should read, enjoy the art of storytelling, and just observe the world from unique perspectives, which is usually from their own perspectives, because that's what makes writing unique. 10 different people can tell the same story in 10 different ways. And I think that's what writers should just think about. Think about how they want to articulate their story and how they'll make it interesting. And yeah, so read as much as you can, enjoy storytelling, and express yourself. Open up that laptop or computer or even a pen and paper and start expressing yourself. That's the first step to becoming a writer.